Hello everyone, Prince Dabslot here, and today I'm going to be talking about two things. First, I'm going to be opening up with a general review and overview of the God's Hunt Compendium, released by Arc Dream Publishing for Delta Green for use in the God's Teeth campaign or in standalone. And then I'm going to be going into God's Eye and all the things I did right, all the things I did wrong, all my tips and tricks for running this really excellent scenario. So going into the general overview of God's Hunt. This is a collection of 4 scenarios that are meant to be woven into the Delta Green God's Teeth campaign, but can be run separately. First, I just want to talk about the quality of this book. Seriously, as a Thoth willing, someone from Arc Dream Publishing is watching this, and I just want to say this is a standout product. It feels great to hold. The art inside is fantastic. The spreads are great, next level. This might be my favorite book to physically hold and show off. I love the cover, love everything about this. So seriously, great product here. The blood spatter along the inside ledge is fantastic. Great book to hold, feel, and show off at the table. And I mean, what a catching cover art. So what you're going to be looking for in here is you're going to get 4 scenarios, and they're pretty beefy scenarios. Even just doing this first one took us about 5-6 sessions. So you're looking at quite a bit of play time just from this edition, especially given I feel like the last 2, especially the last one, is very beefy. And I want to add that these are advanced scenarios. Even reading through these and playing through the first one, I've noticed that these are tough and these demand a lot from your agents as an investigator, not just as, oh, this roll is hard to hit, which there will be that, but just not only is the roll hard to hit, but this has a lot of clues and is very well made investigative scenarios that really ask your investigators to hunt down every single little piece of evidence they might think apply. They need to take good notes, and they need to expect to put things together that might seem unrelated but all come together in a web, which is to say that this is fantastic scenario writing. This is, if you feel like your agents have kind of conquered the Delta Green or have a lot of expectations going into it, God's Hunt will ask so much of them, and it will reward them consistently as well. Not to mention, many of these scenarios have like their cool own gameplay gimmicks and things going on in the background that just shows the skill of the scenario writing here and how well done it is. And every one I'm just so excited to get into, so excited to play. It feels so different and so advanced, which I really love. I have a senior player at my table that has seen so much Delta Green, and even this is making him scratch his head and really double check all his clues and take good notes. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. If I'm running this, you want to expect this to be top of the top. I wouldn't throw new agents into this because, again, there's a lot of clue trees and webs and stuff that they're not going to get. But this really is fantastic, and it also, on a meta level, highlights the evils of the American culture and other aspects of society that we exist in every day. So it has an even deeper level that really expands on what God's Teeth was saying. Additionally, this could be run separately as a standalone product of 4 campaigns, but I really feel like you're missing out on some of the impact and some of the plot threads going on here. So I wouldn't recommend it, but if you're running God's Teeth, I would absolutely recommend you shove this in. You're never going to get a better place to have these scenarios, and if you're running God's Teeth, this really does feel sort of like the missing middle chunk of the campaign. Not that I don't think the base campaign is a tight, great experience, but if you're going to run the campaign, you might as well throw this in. So, without further ado, we're going to be going into God's Eye. I'm going to be giving an overview of the module as a whole, going over some of the NPCs, and then I'm going to be going through it step by step along with some of additional handouts I've made for the scenario and cleaned up some of the maps and such. 2016 Reno, Nevada. At the time, one of the most surveilled cities in America, as persistent vigil is circling drones overhead, trying to show off their drone company, their drone skills to the local law enforcement, to the FBI, and they're very much used to working with the FBI on all this great drone tracking technology that circles overhead and can predict citizens' movements with 78% accuracy. The program is alerted when 2 things happen. First, there was 3 murders in the past few weeks. Now, 3 murders stands out quite a bit, especially when these people were found to be hacked to death by a machete and sigils placed around their body. First alarm. Second alarm. one of the employees at this drone program released a YouTube video of her walking out into a street, naming an address, saying she thinks something's going to happen here, and then whoop, she vaporizes. One frame she's there, one frame she's not. Your agents are brought in to A, figure out if the murders are related and figure out what's going on with the sigil and if there's any more expected, and B, figure out why this lady disappeared and how they can prevent that happening to anybody else. Now, Persistent Vigil, the drone company, is very valuable, not only to the program, but to the FBI, the CIA, whatever alphabet soup agency you want, they want to use this drone program. So it's very important that your agents don't come in like a wrecking ball for this drone program, and your handler has a meeting set up with the drone program in a little bit for your agents to commune with the president, who, man, your agents are going to hate. But that's pretty much God's eye. Now, this goes down several incredible angles that there's a whole cartel mix in here that's going to be fantastic, and not to mention the central gimmick, which is, oh my god, I figured it out. I know exactly what's going on. Look. Indeed. So, once your players, much like the first woman that disappeared, have the understanding that there is a ritual occurring with these drones, that they're being killed people are being killed in an exact specific time and place in view of the drone, of the watcher, they are now unfortunately subject to the ritual, which means if a drone sees them from then on out, they will get yanked into another dimension, basically vaporized and killed, which did happen to one of my agents and was indeed sad. So that's going to be the central gimmick going on. It almost kind of reminds me a little bit of something like The Last Equation or some other mimetic property mission where the knowledge of the ritual is enough to have you be in grave danger, which was a really cool idea to play around with, where your agents, they want to solve it, and by far learning about this ritual and getting all the information about what's going on and doing all the math and crazy occult theory behind it is by far some of the most helpful information they can get to solving this scenario. But if they don't put two and two together, that the other person that disappeared was because of this drone, because of the knowledge of the ritual, they're going to step aside like my agent did and vaporize into thin air. Thank God he was able to predict and give the time and dates of the upcoming murders to finish the ritual before he disappeared, but still a tragic moment. Behind all this are two parties. Well, mainly one hiring the second. So first off is our good friend Anthony Cooper, a genius who was in the cornucopia house as a kid, was rescued, and then went to work to the Air Force military to work on this drone program, which I actually included in my handout files in part 2 and part 3. So as soon as the name Launch of the drone owner came up and all this stuff, they knew it was Anthony Cooper behind it all along, which really isn't the mystery as far as like who's behind it. If you're running God's Teeth, it's going to be a kid in some way, but it's how he's running this and what's going on here. And he is actually trying to reattempt connection to Bast. So he's felt this guidance of Bast all along, that is, he feels like he lost it, but he just still gets these urges telling him to put this code in the drone program, do whatever when he left. And turns out that Bast is actually dragging him to service of Yogg-Sothoth so that the agents can come and kill him as an opposing sorcerer and feed Bast a little bit more. It's a great setup and hints further down the line at the follow-up scenarios for the god involved. And it's a great twist where Cooper thinks he's meeting Bast, he's meeting the kids, and my agents thought that too, where Cooper was a servant of Bast, but in reality, he's serving an entirely different god. And that's kind of its own tragedy in itself. And that's a really great angle. And then who's actually performing the murders is the Mexican cartel crew that he has hired through an uncle. He's been using spells, pretending it's the drone program, to move drugs and stuff across the border for this cartel unit. And in exchange, they're murdering people at an exact time and place that he specified, along with the ritual and sigils to do. So that's a really intriguing setup for a scenario where you'll have hardened cartel killers running around murdering people in full view of the drone cameras. You'll have Cooper hold up an apartment, theoretically can track down your agents and send kill teams after them as well. And actually, the head of the cartel is kind of a funny character, Santa, who wants to help out your players once he gets caught because he knows he's going to be working with the FBI, DEA, and that they want him, so he's not in any actual danger. So, like I said, there's some really cool counterplay with a lot of neat characters going on in the scenario. And we're going to be going through this bit by bit, but that's the general overview. So upon entering the scenario, your agents will, land in Reno, Nevada, and they'll get met with their handler, Tony, who has a great set of rules about the fact that they're on quarantine and that this is extra dangerous, which all these scenarios are extra dangerous. And that was just a great moment of damn it, Tony, really, my agents had. But they're going to go meet up with this drone company, and there's this page 18, about the Gorgon Stare, and you're going to want to give this as a handout, as the book suggests. I just recommend just printing off the page and handing it out. And this was a true moment of horror where, my agents were like, oh, this is great science fiction writing. And then you actually look into it, and it's pretty much all real, and this is exactly what the U.S. government does all the time. So that really shows how great God's Teeth and God's Hunt ties into the modern apparatus of government and how they suck for the average U.S. citizen, along with the erosion of rights. Yeah, so this is where you're going to meet Monch. I played him up kind of like that big golf guy, like it says, and he's, my players were like, man, why is he giving out all these secrets? And that's a good point to drive home that he's not giving out secrets, he's bragging. Like, this guy loves his company, he loves what he does. And man, my agents hated him because he's just another kind of government man that moved into private contracting and working buddy-buddy with government. But he's also a protected target, so your agents can't do anything to him. I mean, I imagine if, they, God forbid, kill him in some way, like, Tony's going to come down like the hammer of God, which I wish this scenario would have expanded on more. But you definitely want to put in some roadblocks it's mentioned slightly in the beginning, but you want to put in some roadblocks by the program being like, do not fuck with Monch. We need this guy. If you dig up dirt on him, fine. Give it to us so that we can have dirt on this guy to run drones when we want it, which was a cool angle to introduce, but you want to make sure you're not here to take him out. He is a valuable asset, much like all the people on his team. I also made my agents a little briefing document, and I recommend you do something the same. I'm not going to post this or some of my other handouts because it's a little too copy and paste from the book, and I just don't want to be ripping straight from the book for everyone. So if you have this, super easy to make in any editing software. But I just gave them the list about the victims, their other killings, and their objectives, and this was a really handy sheet of paper for my agents to have to carry along with. Additionally, I also made a DM screen very similarly where I just took a bunch of the charts that they found that they had in there, along with the timeline, glitches in the system, what pages, some information about the victims, and stat sheets. Again, super easy to make if you have the PDF. I use Bluebeam Editor, but anything free online will do this for you as well. And this was so nice because, honestly, I bounced off this scenario quite a bit reading it. This is a scenario that you're going to want to read, and then read again, and then read a fourth time, and then read it while you're running it, because there are so many details and little things shoved into just passages. Not a bad thing. Obviously very dense, and it's way denser than it might appear at first, but this is a scenario that I found myself flipping around after the first one, being like, holy crap, I gotta go back and I gotta reread this, I gotta tabulate this, I gotta give myself tons of handouts and help for this, because there's a lot in this scenario, and it's very precise, and you're not gonna want to mess it up. So if you can, make yourself a little DM screen, and this next one I will post, because in the book, the maps are quite poor, which is disappointing. I mean, Arc Dream always releases pretty consistently high quality stuff, so I was a little disappointed with the general quality of the maps. Very blurry, very blown out, not really helpful for my players. So after the first session when I gave them the maps, I thought, okay, I got to redo this. So using a program I made, this is the DM screen, this is the DM map, and it shows the exact routing of the drones along with every single location. And here's one for your players at the beginning. And if you're feeling really nice, what I also did was, after they got the drone footage, I gave them a color-coded map showing the starting and end points of all the cars and where exactly everything was and all the killings involved, along with the disappearance, so that they could more easily follow down the leads there. But again, that was because I was feeling really nice, and we had a break, about a 3-week break in between our sessions, so I needed something to jog their memory a little bit, because they're not reading the book like I am. So I will be posting these maps in the Dropbox below for you, and it's also on the God's Teeth Handler Discord where I have posted them. Now, Monch is also a shithead, as all the drone footage of the murders, where the drone flies overhead and watches these people hack someone to death and then look up and wave at the drone like they're knowledgeable of it, which they are, and they need the drone to see them doing this murder. Well, he's actually been deleting these files and not handing them over to the police because, God forbid, the news breaks that these murderers know about his drone program and are actively working with it in a way. So he's got some skeletons he's looking to hide deep in closets, and that actually resolves with him deleting all the footage, and the main programmer who disappeared was saving it to her own personal hard drive, which your agents will find hopefully over the course of the scenario. But regardless, it gives you 4 other employees. Now, this felt a little light for the amount of stuff the company is doing. I mean, there's got to be a lot of maintenance on these drones. I understand it's high profile, so I made sure to emphasize that there's a lot of little, employees and interns and stuff running around. Obviously, they all have high clearance, and you just don't really want your agents to interact with them with much. You're only going to really worry about these 4 named employees. One of which was Kim, which my agents grappled onto from the beginning right away. And when she figured out about her best friend's, her coworker's disappearance, she latched on, and she was indeed the second one to disappear. But her notes gave the agents a great head start and even more additional bonuses to the roles to figure out what's going on. And not to mention, I had her notes hint heavily that if you learn about this, you'll disappear, which my agent didn't pick up on. Say Levy, it happens. He disappeared. He paid the price, and maybe next time, you'll go over more of the notes that I give you with an exact pen and highlighter and figure exactly what's going on. But good learning moment for everyone involved. But yes, Monch is a shithead, and he does indeed have a history of shoving programs before they're done, and even causing soldier-on-soldier violence out in the Middle East by accident with bad intel and bad drone reports. But regardless, these are the 4 NPCs you're going to want to prep, and I kind of handed them out up front. Obviously, I had Clyde kind of always backed by his lawyer VP, and you want to play up the lawyer VP is no, we need proper clearance. I mean, this guy's trying to almost stop Monch from incriminating himself pretty consistently, which was a funny gimmick, and definitely drew some tension if they had to try to split these characters. Like I said, I gave them the option to go talk to Kim or Thomas were interested in the beginning, and my players latched onto Kim and kind of left Thomas. Thomas didn't really come up in this scenario quite a bit for me, but that's purely based on who my agents latched onto and what they went down. I had Thomas still filling out all the reports about the drone coming back damaged, because the drone is actually teleporting to another dimension when it sees this murder happening and coming back. So he was still filling out reports, and it was kind of in the background, kind of supplying them with agents as they were my agents with info as they were going into the systems and pulling up damage reports and figuring out what's happening to these drones, but he didn't really come up a lot. Diving back into the scenario proper, your scenario also offers several of these consultants to bring in that your agents can call if they feel like they don't have a skill set. And I really tried to bully my agents into calling these people. They did not. They had no interest in calling these consultants. They did not want to bring in more people to their crew. So if you think this is going to be a problem, either just have Tony call the consultants in when it looks like they're going to need it, or, you can respect your agent's decision to not call in any assistance, which my agent did. And man, they failed a lot of computer science roles until they got Kim on their side. I'm going to be talking about the police angle to this scenario, as the police are running around doing their own investigation. And in the timeline, my investigators then went to Mosh, got involved with Kim. They actually showed Kim the video of the glitch by accident. Kim freaked out, but she was on their side and committed, and she helped them get into Nora's apartment and do all that. But one of my agents, after they found the footage of going through all Nora's stuff, they then went back and tracked down one of the cars. One of the cars actually is a bait car that is how your agents get involved with the police, which was an interesting way to get your agents, kind of in this investigation and on the side after the detectives, because the detective and lieutenant don't trust persistent vigil. They think, he's, of course, the 3 most important murders that he could help them out with. The footage is gone. And one of them was actually in contact with Nora prior, and Nora was saying that Monch was covering her stuff up. So the police are actually pretty open to having this DOD investigative group come on in and help them out, which I thought was cool. And I like the agents, being friendly and being involved. But regardless, that's actually one of the ways they get involved is through a bait car, which is kind of interesting angle to them getting there. Additionally, they could go through Nora's phone and then go to the police after they go to Nora. But it does feel important because this kind of involves them with the cartel angle that the police suspect, and it goes over some of the information about the victims the police are able to pull, one of which was a reporter on the cartel that kind of brought down this Sicario group led by Santa. So my agent actually then watched some video, read the expose by this guy, and that way he was able to recognize Santa when he saw him later in the scenario. And I had him also recognize the cartel tattoos on the bodies after the gunfight with the cartel that occurred during the fourth murder for my team. But one major roadblock in that regard was the fact that out of these 3 cars that they could track down, one is a police bait car, one is nothing, the other one is where all the clues are. And of course, my agents didn't go to the one with all the clues are after they did the first 2, and we're like, okay, we're good. So that was a little tough, and this scenario is well enough written that there are multiple ways to get to the conclusions and get the evidence. So it wasn't a big deal that they missed these clues, but especially with that other one kind of being a red herring and not even having an entry on here was a little tough to them convince them to try and go check out the other one after the police and the thing. But again, wasn't necessary, but definitely was something where that second car being kind of a nothing burger, I wasn't really prepared for, and perhaps I would encourage them further to check out every single stop and start location in the videos. To follow along with my agents, what they did is I had a group working with the police, meeting with the police lieutenant and detective and going over all this information, while another agent kind of hacked into Nora's phone and also gave a lot of it to Kim to help Kim try and figure it out. And Kim was also doing a lot of the hacking for them, given that Kim has great computer science. And what happened then is then Kim almost got it and was like, okay, I'm going to go explore. And much like the text, she got into her car, drove out to Rancho Manor, and vaporized. Car explodes in a huge show. Very kind of ridiculous out of nowhere. And it was fun to do. But that then my agent Kim left a lot of her notes behind, and so that gave my agent after that, directly after the disappearance and learning all the information from the police, all my agents met up in the hotel as my one agent, did the roles required, and I gave him plus 40 because he had both Kim's notes and Nora's notes to go through all this information. And yes, he went through it and he figured it all out, and I gave him that handout packet. And I told him, hey, you can really only share the time and date of the upcoming murders. Anything else, that's up to you. And if you're going to role play it esoterically and that you can't really explain it, which he couldn't. And so he then were like, okay, cool. Then let's prep for this next upcoming murder, which was in about 6 hours from that night. Stepped outside and disappeared. And when he disappeared, I did the Pharaoh glitch, so I had him appear in Nephrin Ka's landing. There's Nephrin Ka right there, almost like waving to the drone as it teleports. And I included a scene of my agent there, like disemboweled on this ritual table that induced, some great sand losses. And my one other agent had a complete panic freak out and went into a fugue state for a few hours because, they hit their breaking point and all their disorders, which was great. As my one agent was like trying to track down where this fugue state agent went while also trying to prep for a deadly ambush, while also calling Tony and saying there's issues going on right now, and getting my, disappeared agent to make a new character sheet and rejoin the team. So a bunch of chaotic stuff happen all the time. And that's one thing this scenario is going to be really good, is it always feels like it does the great thing that almost reminds me a lot of Lovers in the Ice, where there are a lot of like ticking clocks happening in the background and just things going on that your agents are not going to have enough time to do. And that's really where I enjoy Delta Green the most, is when there's this great background time pressure and your agents might not be able to point to what exactly is this time pressure, but man, they know there's something, and they know there's something bad, especially with them, the murders every 3 days or so. It's not exact 3 days, but around then they knew something was going to happen. And that's when I think Delta Green is the best, when there's this background tension that's just brewing that you just don't know about, but they know it's there, and just shows how good Caleb Stokes is at writing scenarios. Not to glaze the man too much, but really fantastic scenario writing, especially reading ahead for these next few that I'm going to run. These are some top tier Delta Green scenarios, and even if you're not going to run God's Teeth, I would recommend running these just if you feel like you have hardened agents and you're ready to really cut their teeth on some of the toughest of the tough investigations Delta Green has available. I also made a handout for when my players want to know and actually pass the roles to discover all of the knowledge, because the knowledge in this scenario is kind of a floating clue. It doesn't really have any precise, oh, once your agents do this, they're going to realize. It even says, be pretty direct about when they know things. So it was when I felt like my agents had hit a certain point and had notes in front of them that they wanted to go through, that I was like, yes, now you can make these rolls. And then I brought them aside, gave them this handout, and said, you're not allowed to share this information or how you got it. I mean, you can, but it requires hours and in x5 roll, and that's then going to, unknowingly expose the other agents that learn about it to the ritual. So right now it's just one agent. And I also included this line at the top about how, Kim, because she disappeared when she was on the way to Rancho Manor, about saying, oh, I'm so close. I always have my best eureka moments when I'm driving, to imply that she wasn't knowledgeable, had the epiphany, disappeared, careened, exploded, did the whole scene like that. But yeah, I'd recommend doing this, just giving a little cutout. I had information about the time and place along with this great pattern and ritual here. Again, not going to post it because it's just straight pulling from the book, but it's very easy to do. And this was nice to have a physical sheet for my agents to go over and pull from. And he was able just to explain the next killing locations and time and place before he was like, let's go, step outside, and vaporized like we all hoped he would. I also printed off this drone survival guide. Found online, and it's very neat, and it's an aspect that I think the scenario kind of pushes, but I wish either my agents had figured out, or maybe I should have pushed it more, where your agents are infected by this knowledge and then have to use this to run away from the drones. My agents kind of got lucky where the one infect agent was indoors when he found out and was able to share at least the bare minimum information before he was vaporized and stepped outside, but I could see that happening where someone gets vaporized and realizing, oh crap, we got to relearn this information, and then we have to use this drone survival guide to try and hide from the drones on U.S. soil, which I think is a really interesting angle. And I wish I would have implemented more. Once my agents, physically asked, how can we avoid these drones? That's when I gave this out. But I feel like being too upfront about this information would also take away from the gotcha moment of the disappearance. So it's kind of a tough one, and it's really your call there. But regardless, this was a very cool handout to give and be like, oh yeah, by the way, you are not the first or the last people to be hiding from U.S. drones. It's kind of a scourge of the entire world. So welcome to the club. So my agents actually preemptively knew, when and where the fourth killing was going to happen, but just barely had enough time to get there. One of the agents used some of the time when another one was in a fugue state to go scope it out. And because he had good military science, I gave him plus 20% to the roll for the ambush of the killer showing up, because he took the time to stake out places, know exactly where every agent's going to be situated. Two were around the house with shotguns ready to jump out and blast. And he was across the street with a sniper rifle underneath some bushes ready to get shooting. And that's exactly what happened. They rolled and they were not surprised, which, crap, that is a deadly ambush if your agents are surprised. Lethality 10% with 55% to hit, that's not nothing to joke about. But they took some damage, but no casualties, and they shredded the cartel team. I included a few things with the cartel. One was I included, when they went through the pockets, a piece of paper that showed the sigil that they needed to lay out, just to show that these cartel members aren't knowledgeable or really care about the ritual occurring. They might think it's witchcraft, but they're just following instructions. They're not actually performing any witchcraft themselves, which I think is important to show that there is another operator behind this whole thing. Along with, I gave them cartel tattoos, which my agent was able to recognize as the BLO group from the earlier documentary that he watched, along with, I had them say some Spanish about going to the cantina to meet Santa, because I feel like they already put together enough of the clues and I was ready to kind of bring the scenario to a close. But I had them actually speak that in Spanish, and one of my agents knew Spanish, which thankfully he was able to translate as a character, which is how you should be rewarding your agents for, there hasn't been a lot of Spanish in this campaign, and from the beginning he picked Spanish as a thing, so I wanted to reward him a little bit. And that's what you should always be doing, is kind of looking at your agent's character sheets and figuring out how exactly you can reward some especially heavy stat block allocation, especially if the scenario doesn't actually call for it. After this cartel shootout, one of my agents got quite heavily hurt, and I roll in the open, so I don't flub any rolls or cheese anything. All my agents can see exactly what I roll. Man, those killers did not roll like killers. Let me tell you, they rolled poo-poo. They were terrible. But such is life. Sometimes my agents are going to roll bad. Sometimes the killers are going to roll bad. And, that's why I roll in the open, just so that there's this trust of I'm not flubbing rolls. I'm not making this easier on you guys. And the same thing where it just shows this innate layer. And that's something I just do because way back when I was running 5E, I definitely had a tendency as a new DM to be too nice or to flub rolls when I needed to. And honestly, it just didn't feel right. It kind of broke some of the trust with me and my players. So I just have a open policy now. If I roll in the open, obviously when there's secret rolls or something called for it, that's when I'll turn it around my dice tower and just roll. But they know I'm not messing with the rolls, and especially in combat and life or death situation, you should be rolling on the table so that your agents know it's a fair game. And they died because they died and because the scenarios rolled lethality. But in my case, they rolled like crap and they could not hit, I guess, the broadside of a barn somehow. I've never seen more 98s, 99s, 100s than when I was rolling for these killers. So my agents did end up executing them, going through their pockets, grabbing all information, along with a conversation about going to see Santa. So my agents then scoped out the caffeine katina and got Santa as he came out. One of my agents had seen the documentary, so he was able to recognize Santa, which is really cool because he was honestly convinced that the cartel angle was a whole false flag and a red herring, and that when the killer showed up, it was going to be a bunch more of the kids. And it's great to really show that, no, you need to pay attention to every single little piece of info I gave you, because this is how well written this stuff is, and it will come up and it will matter, and you will be like, oh, I'm a dummy for not putting this together. So yeah, they confronted Santa. My agent has lock picking, so they kind of baited him in, or they waited for him to get into the cantina in the morning, unlocked the door, and then stealthily made their way in with a successful stealth roll, tackled him, zip tied him. Like I said, Santa's a very funny character, and it was actually a really good character because I had his implication be that he escaped his death by working with the FBI and DEA and then later disappeared. And he's very open as written about everything that's going on. And he's more than happy to be working with the FBI and DEA. And of course, Tony's calling them saying, if you know about Santa, you need to hand him over. We're going to have NRO Delta come meet guys out in the desert to extract this high value target. Like, he is highly important for the program, for FBI, for DEA, for blah, blah, blah. And it really gave my agents that like icky feeling of, oh, like this guy's a killer. He's a terrible person. And we have to rescue him, and it's funny enough because my agents also got the call from Tony about, if you find out who's conducting this ritual, you need to keep him safe and extract him, and he can't be killed. So my agents kind of were like, well, if we have two people we can't kill, we can probably get away with killing one of them, so we'll extract Santa and then probably kill Anthony, which was a funny foresight into how to keep Tony on their side, which is important for this campaign, as Tony has the kill switch box, along with my mole agent that is introduced. Now, Santa would have absolutely, if he had the drop on them, pulled out the submachine gun or the double barrel shotgun, which is like 85% to hit, and just would have racked my agents away. But like I said, they succeeded on a lockpicking roll and a stealth roll and an unarmed combat roll to tackle him and zip tie him up. So I gave it to him, and like I said, he was more than helpful. And then he's going to give them the address to go find Anthony Cooper. And Anthony Cooper again is very helpful for going on what's going on. I mean, he's open about it. He's been rescued and now he's following. I had him name drop Yog-Sothoth. I'd be like, I've met my god, Yog-Sothoth. It's the one from as a kid. And my agents kind of give each other that look, be like, oh, that's not Bast. That's not Bast, is it? And that's going to bring God's Eye to a close. Like I said, this was a fantastic scenario, very difficult, and some really tough conjecture your agents have to make, along with following it down like good investigators. So if you're going to run this separate from God's Teeth, I would recommend that you bring in a crew of experienced Delta Green agents. But if you have an experienced crew of Delta Green agents, man, this is going to test them in all the right ways. They're going to make clue boards. They're going to be going through all their mysteries that they have to try and solve this one. And for that reason, I can't recommend it enough. I love some good high-level advanced content, and this is up there. And the rest of the scenarios look very similar as well. So, but if this is your first time to the channel, I'm Prince Dabslot, make horror RPG content. All my regular viewers, thank you so much. I'm almost at 300 subscribers, which is insane. Never figured out even get there, especially as quick as it did. But if you love running Delta Green, I have other scenarios to start it off, and I've also been going through this God's Teeth scenario as I've been running it. So feel free to check out those videos if you want an in-depth look about how that has been running it from a mechanical standpoint. All my resources will be posted below in the YouTube description with the Dropbox link, and also all my link to Drive Through RPG are affiliate now, so I get, a whole penny when you buy something through there. So maybe in 10 years you could get me a coffee, which would be really cool. But that's about it. Remember to like and subscribe because I like watching that number go up. Thanks everyone, and happy handling.